things are happening for the Ontario Para Network. There is a sport hosting program with the Ontario government and so many exciting events happening. Doug Hannam, the executive director of ONPARA, is here to tell us more. Let's get started.
Welcome to Parasport Nation with Alex Smyth and Nathan Clement.
Welcome in to Parasport Nation. I'm your host, Alex Smyth, still battling the remnants of a cold. Let's check in with co-host Nathan Clement, see how he's faring with his illness. Nathan, how are you holding in there? Are you feeling any better yet?
I guess you and I both have November blues right now. Is this the tag team effort where you and I are a little wounded, but we're going to get through, and we have an amazing show today, so I cannot wait to talk about all we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. We have Doug Hannam joining the program later to talk all about the sport hosting program through the Ontario government. A really fascinating conversation you won't want to miss, but before we get into any of that, we take a look ahead to this weekend because the Para Hockey Cup is set to kick off in Dawson's Creek, BC. Nathan, this is going to be the first another opportunity for Team Canada to pull themselves together, get some good competition under their belt with a new head coach, with a new makeup of the team, with Greg Westlake rejoining the fold. And they got some pretty stiff competition because they're starting things off against China, then they face Czechia, and then they end the round robin against the US. And then from there, you go into the semifinals and the medal matches. What are your thoughts and takeaways as you look ahead to the Para Hockey Cup?
You mentioned it off the top there. This is a team that's still building their systems under new coach Boris Rybelka. And it's going to be really exciting to see just the development that this time from when they had the Ostravia, when they participated in Ostravia in Czechia, and we just recently had Dominic Kozlino on as well as Greg Westlake on, and it's going to be really fascinating just to see that evolution of the squad, the evolution of the roster, as China and Czechia are always those dark horses for Canada and the US that can make these games a lot more interesting, but also against the United States, because in Czechia the games were close, the games were tight. The States beat Canada 2-1 in the round robin and 3-0 in the gold medal match. So it's going to be really interesting to see how some more time with this new roster and new squad can really evolve and really take off, as we do have some home ice advantage being in Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, and it's also going to be interesting, not just against the U.S. Obviously, that is going to be a must-watch game, or potentially two. But when you look at Czechia, when you look at China, those are no longer really pushover teams. They are going to test you as a team, especially as you're trying to instill that new system that Coach Boris Rybelka wants the team to play. So I think that's a good proving ground. If we had to kind of schedule things accordingly, I think they would be happy with the layout of these games. You're facing the U.S. third. Okay, well, maybe you shake off the rust in the first game against China. Okay, maybe you get into a bit of a groove against Czechia, and then the test comes against the U.S. But like I said, those first two games aren't just easy games anymore. You're going to have to bring your full potential to those and tweak things along the way.
No, they are not, and that's where para hockey's going. It's no longer easy matches in that top A group of countries, and it's going to be really exciting to see. But also, Canada just had a week-long training camp in Calgary with everyone who's going to be on that roster in Dawson's Creek. So it's going to be fascinating to see that time spent together, just developing plays on the ice, but also film, study, everything that goes into preparation for a Czechia, for a China, and eventually when they play the U.S. in the round robin. And who knows what happens in the semifinals, who they get paired with. But either way, it's going to be an exciting tournament and a really great benchmark of that evolution of Canada's roster.
Yeah, and as we kind of look ahead into the calendar, we start to get closer and closer. December's literally at our doorstep. This is kind of the point when all these Paralympic winter sports kind of burst onto the scene. We start to see the start of things like World Cup seasons and other competitions that start in December and wind their way as we make our way ever closer. We're now less than 100 days to the Milano Cortina Paralympics, Nathan. It's truly an exciting time.
This is the most exciting time of the year. The old December saying it's the most wonderful time of the year, but it really is for parasport here, as we have the Para Hockey Cup happening in Dawson's Creek, but that isn't the only competition happening in Canada, as we have the Continental Cup happening for Para Nordic in Canmore, Alberta, right before we have the FIS First World Cup of the season in Canmore, and then the IBU, the International Biathlon Union's World Cup in Canmore as well. So this is a big send-off and big start to the year for competitions in Canada, but also internationally, with Landgraf in the Netherlands hosting the Para Snowboarding World Cup, first World Cup of the year there. So this is really the big weekend that starts things off. So if you're a big sports fan, you have rivalry week in college football, you have the NFL season underway, and you also have para sports really taking off and getting to a fun part of the year.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan, there for just a very quick PSN update, PSN preview, basically. We're definitely going to be reacting to some of those results next week when the results roll in, and hopefully Canada fares quite well there. But in the meantime, we need to shift our attention over to something a bit closer to home for me here in Ontario, and that is the sport hosting program the Ontario government allows and offers for sport organizations to host events within the province. We are thrilled to be joined by Doug Hannam, who is the executive director of ONPARA, to share some more about how this program helps support ONPARA's mission. Doug, thanks so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you guys.
Well, it's great to have you on because we're talking about the sport hosting program through the Ontario provincial government and how it's really helping to allow organizations to kind of get funding, get support to host sporting events. Can you talk a bit about how it's been able to help ONPARA with delivering some of these different events and the supports that it's provided you and the organization?
For sure. So the sport hosting program is by no means new. It's been around for quite a few years now. That's not to say it's not insignificant, because it is. So it's particularly significant for smaller organizations such as ourselves to try and host these national, international, all these kinds of events. Quite frankly, I don't know if we would have the capacity to run as good an event if we didn't have that extra funding from the province. So we've got one recent example, and then we've got one coming up next year. So in the spring of October 2025, we hosted the National Wheelchair Basketball Championships. It was at Durham College. We had 6 teams. We had 3-on-3 basketball. We had 5-on-5, all for national championships. Great venue. We partnered with Durham Tourism on the event, and it was a complete success. From a sport hosting perspective, once again, those dollars that we got from the province really helped drive the event. We did very well in sponsorship, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank the organizing committee, who did an outstanding job of raising local sponsorship. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest. But we don't have an opportunity to apply for national events for funding through it. It would have to be an NSO. So this is the one way that we can get some additional funds from the province to host that event. So it was a great success. And here's the other thing is, we haven't hosted or been part of a hosting program in Ontario for a number of years for national championships. And so for me, that's an issue. As one of the biggest provinces in our sports, basketball, rugby, and tennis, I feel like we should be part of hosting nationals. I think we have a commitment. So I was particularly happy to be able to host nationals for probably the first time in at least 6 or 7 years. And then building on that, we are also hosting wheelchair rugby nationals in the spring of 2026 in Ottawa. So once again, the province has supported us financially, and they accepted our proposal. And so similarly, that money will go a long way to support the efforts of the local organizing committee and ourselves in terms of running that event. And the big lead on that event is the Ottawa Club. However, we're all in it together, working towards hosting that event. And again, we haven't hosted rugby nationals in a very long time. So that really helps to put us on the map as far as hosting these events are concerned. And of course, the financial contribution is meaningful.
Thank you, Doug, for joining us today. You mentioned that the Wheelchair Basketball National Championships happened in Ontario, but what other events have been funded with sports hosting programs?
Yeah, I mean, it's really because, Nathan, those are the two programs that we run. Those are the most comparable. I can easily speak to other sports other than ourselves. And I mean, it really is all over the map in terms of the contributions that the province has made to other events. Colleagues of mine that run events, whether it's winter or summer sports, they've all benefited from the program. So it's, of course, I'm going to focus on what we do in parasport. But the program is massive in that it supports able-bodied sports as well. And so I would say that the program is far-reaching. It hits both winter and summer sports. And once again, really contributes to Ontario hosting as many events as possible. I think the other relevant thing here, Nathan, as far as this program is concerned, is our friends in Quebec do very well when it comes to funding for sports. You're kind of nodding your head. It's I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit jealous. So I mean, they're often the province that leads the way in hosting events. And I'll give you an example. I mean, for rugby, they've hosted nationals 2 out of the last 3 years. And it has to do with capacity. And so, and the same holds true for able-bodied sport. They're competition for us. And so, it's always a case of, can we match Quebec? Can we bring the athletes here from across the country and internationally too, to put Ontario map and support those events. And so the hosting program doesn't stop at the provincial level. As you probably know, it also goes to the national level in terms of support. I can't speak of it directly, but I know, NSOs have partnered with provinces to run international events. I know one thing I know for a fact is, you may be aware that next year, Wheelchair Basketball Canada is hosting the World Championships, which is just absolutely incredible. That is a world-class event, and they tell me one of the biggest parasport events there is. And I do know that they've partnered to apply for the hosting program for that event through Ontario. So it is really a far-reaching program, whether it's able-bodied sport, parasport, national level or international level.
Yeah, and those both the national wheelchair basketball competition at Durham College we highlighted, and also previewed the upcoming World Championships for wheelchair basketball in Ottawa next year. And there's so much excitement around that. I'm curious from your perspective, it's just the success on the nationals held at Durham College. Like, how much hope does that give you that going forward, whether it's the upcoming national wheelchair rugby tournament or other events that come up in the future, that, okay, the growth is continuing to happen here. There's momentum building now that you have the financial support to put on these events in Ontario.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Alex, and thanks for asking, because ultimately, as far as we're concerned, I would say, grassroots development is the key to our success, but that's at the club level. I think you all know that, that's where it happens. That's where the majority of recruitment occurs, and we are in complete and total support of our clubs when it comes to that, because we know in order for the sport to have a future, it has to be at the club level, and that's where they're engaging new potential athletes. As you probably know, rehab centers are also a great opportunity for us to promote new athletes. So what does that mean? That means in terms of our role, and one of our chief responsibilities is to populate national teams with as many Ontario athletes as possible. And we've done that. We're certainly, when it comes to rugby, if you look at previous Paralympics, the team has been dominated by Ontario athletes. That will probably continue to be the case. And our contribution to both the men's and women's program when it comes to basketball is significant, as are the younger programs. Why do I say all this? Because the more opportunity our provincial teams get to participate in these kind of events, the more they get to play the highest level of basketball or rugby. We know that game reps are vital for athletes to progress through the system. And we know that they progress that much more when the level of competition is at its highest. So when we have the opportunity to host these events, it means that, first of all, some athletes don't necessarily go to nationals because we support our teams, but a lot of it comes from within the team. So, for example, in BC this year for nationals basketball, we're doing what we can, but it's going to be a tough slog because you've got airfare, accommodation, and that kind of thing. When events are hosted here in the province, it's such an easy get. It's a drive in most cases. I know most of our rugby athletes will be driving to Ottawa. Why not? It's an easy get. So that when we host these events, that means that we actually get more athletes are able to participate because of the geographic proximity. And it sounds very practical, but it's also very meaningful because maybe they have not had an opportunity to play at nationals before. Maybe they can't afford it. So it really does have an impact. And I think the last thing I'll say for either sport is it exposes new people to the sports. It exposes new potential athletes to get involved with the sports. And we did a Triad event in Durham as part of nationals last year, and it was exposed to a number of high schools and kids to see wheelchair basketball for the first time. The great thing about wheelchair basketball in particular is that anybody can play at the club level. And so, while I can't give you exact numbers, I know that being exposed to the sport directly and seeing it being played at the highest level at the nationals was also really good. So I could go on for some time about the positive impact of hosting those events.
It's really amazing and incredible to see. I'm a BC athlete that grew up in the para swimming stream, so I got to meet and know a lot of Ontario athletes who are through that Quest for Gold program, who really got the benefits of a lot of the outreach and development work that ONPARA has done for them, getting them to a Paralympics or just getting them to be able to find a sport. But in that ONPARA message, it takes a lot of fundraising. It takes a lot of groundwork to develop and build these opportunities. And right now, ONPARA has a fundraising program going to the end of December. Can you tell us what that is?
Oh, Nathan, thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. Yeah. So look, I want to make it very, very clear that we're appreciative of the support that we get from the government of Ontario. But the fact remains is that we're in competition with every sport there is. And there's only so much money available from the province to support amateur sport. So what does that mean? We try and reach out for corporate sponsorship, which again, I'm sure you probably know is becoming more and more challenging because everybody everybody's going after it. We're undeterred, and it's a big part of my job to do that. But what we decided to do this year is launch a fundraising program. I don't think it's overly ambitious. We're trying to raise $40,000. It's called Drive to December. And what we're doing is we're trying to raise that money, and 25% of the funds raised will go directly to our clubs. The remaining funds will be used to support our high performance athletes as well as our programs. So it's the first time we've done any kind of major fundraising effort. And so we're hopeful and we're getting the word out. And your timing is interesting, Nathan, because we sent out a bunch of stuff today to try and get ahead of Black Friday and Giving Tuesday. Again, we're up against the world with these fundraisers. So if anybody is indeed interested in donating, they can go to our website, and there's a nice donate button on our website, and it's onpara.ca, and anything is appreciated. And Nathan, I appreciate the opportunity for letting me talk about it briefly, for sure. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, and it's just the impact that organizations like ONPARA can have on the parasport movement in general. It's just so huge. I want to go back for a second, Doug, because this is something that I've kind of rattled around in my brain, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but it has to do with the choice of locations for hosting events. We talked about the Nationals being hosted at Durham College. I know next year the World Championship for wheelchair basketball is at University of Ottawa, I believe. Is there something to be said for the idea of hosting especially parasport competitions at Ontario post-secondary campuses? Is it due to like a convenience factor that everything's in one? Is it an accessibility, accommodation standard? Like, do you have kind of any insight into why colleges and universities seem to make for a really strong place to host these types of parasport events?
Yeah, absolutely, I do, Alex. So one of the biggest challenges and biggest expenses we have with hosting national events is getting the athletes to and from the venue. So, for example, one of our bigger expenses last year was getting the athletes and their equipment to Durham College from Pearson, which is where all of the provinces were flying into. So that was one of our biggest budget items in terms of expense for the event. One of the reasons we picked Durham was that it was a short wheel away from everything. So the athletes could easily get to the cafeteria for food, to the accommodations for where they were staying, and to the venue. And that is massive because we didn't have to worry about increased costs for transportation to and from the accommodation. I know a few years ago I went to Nationals in New Brunswick, and unfortunately the venue was a good, I'd say, 15-minute drive from the accommodation. And I can just imagine that that would have been quite an expense for them. But here's the other thing is coordinating travel back and forth. Because not everybody plays at the same time. Some teams are going to the venue after about to play. Some teams are coming back after playing. So that adds a whole level of complication or challenge when it comes to organizing these events. We didn't have that. We didn't have that for Durham, and I'm telling you, it made a huge difference. We could focus on the event. We could focus on making sure that the athletes had a terrific experience, and they did. And we got a lot of positive feedback from the athletes that they didn't have to worry about getting to and from meals, to and from the venue, right, to play. The other thing that I've seen, and this is not a slight to hotel accommodation, but my experience so far is that the universities and colleges also go out of their way to make the rooms accessible. As you probably know, there's very few accessible rooms in any accommodation. We're lucky if we get 2 or 3. And so my experience so far with the university and colleges is is that they understand that because they've hosted these kinds of things before, and they do what's necessary to make the accommodation accessible, and that's massive. They had hosted the Ontario Parasport Games in Durham before, and so they were fully aware of what was necessary in terms of accessibility. So that's another big piece as well.
That's always such a major piece. And that's one thing I found too with a lot of universities and a lot of colleges is they make it more accessible. They find the way to just make sure everyone's welcome and it's an environment that they can easily access the events. But kind of switching the calendar as we head into 2026, you mentioned national championships coming up in rugby, but is there any major events or any initiatives that ONPARA and yourselves are really looking forward to in the new year?
Yeah, so certainly nationals and of course the World Championships, being hosted in our backyard in Ottawa, will be two major events. We're going to support Wheelchair Basketball Canada as much as we can with the event, but that's world class, and I'm certainly hoping I can get down to Ottawa and participate and help out where I can, because I've never been part of anything like that. So that will be really exciting. I cannot imagine the challenges. It's one thing when you're talking about 4 or 5 teams for nationals. I can't imagine, 8, 10, how many teams they'll have for that, and dealing with all of the challenges as far as what we just talked about, accessibility and that kind of thing. So those are the two major international events. I don't know if you guys caught wind of this, but our newest endeavor last year, we ran for the first time something called Para Tough Mudder. I don't know if you heard anything about it. I don't know if you're familiar with Tough Mudder and Spartan, but I'll put that on the radar for you guys because we're running it again next September. We're doing a second Para Tough Mudder and our first ever Para Spartan in September. I personally ran it, so I'm a para athlete. I don't know if you guys know it. I have CP. We ran it with 6 of us this year, Para Tough Mudder, and it was very cool. 5 of us happened to have CP, and 1 was visually impaired. We did a 5K course, got totally dirty, had a ton of fun, and we're really excited about moving forward with those 2 events. The organization that runs those events is really excited. These are the first para events of their kind in Canada. So that's one's a little near and dear to my heart, but I'm excited about building that for next year. It's so cool. Very cool. Yeah.
Well, Doug, as someone who is familiar with Tough Mudder and the Spartan races myself, I am, the fact you put that on our radar, we will be talking about it. We're always looking for different para sports or para events to cover. That is certainly one that's off the beaten path, literally in the mud. So we will certainly be following up and following along with that. But thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you on, just talking about, the program that you guys offer at ONPARA and just how the sport hosting program is helping you achieve the goals and hosting events here in Ontario. So we really appreciate your time.
It's been fantastic. I could talk to you about parasport for hours. So anytime you want to have me on again, if you like what I have to say, happy to connect with you anytime. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, we'll hold you to that. Don't you worry.
Great. I look forward to it.
And that was our conversation with Doug Hannam, the executive director of ONPARA. Nathan, I just love talking to Doug. I feel like we could have talked for a whole hour, and there would be more and more layers that we would continue to peel back. But first off, what are your thoughts on Para Tough Mudder? Do you even know what Tough Mudder is? Do you have that out in BC, or is that in more Ontario-based thing?
Oh, we're tough, and it's full of mudder out here too. Tough Mudder is a big event out in BC. There's been events in Whistler, and I even know people who've helped organize the events over in Ontario. So, Alex, we can say it here on air. Are you and I going to do Tough Mudder together next year in September?
Well, I think that will remain to be seen, but the fact that they're putting together a parasite gives me hope. I'm willing to get dirty on a Saturday or a Sunday. If you are, Nathan, you're the one with the busy schedule. I understand if you have to say, you know what, this is for the good of my athletic career. I can't participate. You have like that in your rider. You can't actually do other sports outside of paracycling just to protect your legs, or if you have an insurance policy on you. I understand, Nathan, you can back out down the road, but I'm game.
If I'm not going, I'll be your ultimate hype man at the event, but we'll have to look in the contract, see if I can do it. But on a more serious note, that was an absolutely incredible conversation. You can just see Doug's passion, Doug's involvement. You're based in Ontario. What does it mean to have a program like ONPARA in that province?
Well, I think it's huge. Like, now their focus is very specific, as he mentioned, tied to wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, and to wheelchair tennis. But just even within those programs, like, how many athletes do we know of on the national scene, or who were members of the national team, that are based in Ontario, that have connections to those sports? Like, there is quite a large contingent. So the fact that Ontario is one of the largest provinces, they're finally getting proper funding to bring these competitions here is huge. And, you know, I think it's only going to continue to grow the sport and the movement more. Like, we talked about some of the events that Durham College had hosted over this past year. We've already previewed the World Championships taking place in Ottawa next year. Like, these are all connected to the sport hosting program funding, and the longer that this goes on, the more that, you know, ONPARA and other organizations can tap into that funding program, the more events we're going to be able to talk about that are being hosted here in Ontario, because there's a lot of places, even where I'm living and based, Hamilton, Ontario. We got universities, we got colleges. Want to bring a competition or two down here. This is a big city. I know it would host a really tremendous tournament. It just needs an opportunity to do it. Maybe the sports hosting program will be that difference maker, but that is a conversation for another day, Nathan, because we're out of time. So for you at home, thanks for watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Parasport Nation. Like and subscribe to the channel to follow us now.